Hello, you guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I thought it'd be fun for a bonus video to show you guys how to put together this fall wreath. Amazingly enough, our neighbor actually gave us tons of tree trimmings from their maple tree. So I thought it would be fun to make it all into a wreath and show you guys how to do it. It's crazy easy. It is a bit repetitive, but easy. You will need a lot of trimmings or stems or whatever foliage you decide to use if you're going to make a wreath this size. The supplies are pretty simple. So you just need wire wreath form and some floral wire. What I have is an 18-inch wreath form and 22 gauge floral wire. So all you have to do is pretty much attach the wire to the wreath form, and how I do this is like a figure eight pattern, and I just use the holes that are there to create this figure eight. You just want to kind of secure the wire enough to the wreath form so that you can start to attach all the stems. Once you feel like your wire is attached pretty securely, go ahead and push it towards the back. You want it to come from behind the wreath form, basically the outside to the inside portion. The next part is pretty fun. All you have to do is just start putting your branches together. Typically, you want at least 3 to 4 for one bundle. You just want to create little bundles, and that's all we're going to do here. I did snip some of the branches so that way I could kind of work with them a little easier. And how you do that is you just kind of follow one of the stems towards the bottom. Not the main stem, but just like a connecting stem, and then you snip there. Once you're satisfied with your little bundle, you're going to want to put it onto the wreath form. Now, I kind of tilt it upwards onto the wreath form, and you'll see later why I do this, but then you'll take the wire and kind of wiggle it in between the leaves and then go under, and you just wrap this way quite a few times. Sometimes I'll do it a little bit heavier on the first bundle than I will the rest, but typically it's about 3 times. Once you're satisfied with how secure your first bundle is, you're going to want to go ahead and start creating that second one. So as you can see, I have quite a variety in color between all of my stems. So I just try to put a good mix together so that it looks really good throughout the entire wreath. If you had just one solid color, then you wouldn't have to worry about that as much, obviously. But if you have a variety like I do, just try to be intentional with the colors you're putting together. So as you can see, I tilted this one more towards the center of the wreath, whereas the first one I tilted up. What this will help you do is create a more full wreath. And by alternating the branches in this way, you'll also end up with a more professional end result. Again, you're just gonna wiggle the wire in between all of the leaves. You don't want to crush them. You want them to be a little more fluffy. Plus, by doing this, it'll help you to hide that wire a little bit more. So on to the next bundle. I'm gonna try to show you a little bit better of a view on how I snip the branches by following each little stem to its main center stem and snipping there at the bottom. By doing this, I feel like you get just a little bit more material because as you're kind of trimming, you can trim in a way that basically makes more branches for yourself. I feel like this creates a lot less waste and helps you to get that fuller looking wreath as well, especially if you feel like, oh, I'm kind of running out of stems, or anything like that. So as you can see, this one will tilt outward towards the outer part of the wreath. And same thing, you're just gonna wiggle that wire in between those leaves and keep on keeping on. This is where the part of wreath making kind of starts to become a little tedious and repetitive. So I definitely love to just, put on a podcast, listen to music, even watch TV, whatever you feel like you want to do while you're doing it. It's pretty simple after this part, at least up until the end. So for trimming purposes, I do kind of wait until I have a few bundles on there, but you can trim as you go as well. The way that I trim is I sort of wait until I have those branches that are kind of going outward away from the wreath. If they're already going into the wreath form a little bit more, that can kind of help you create more of that weight. So I don't tend to trim that much on the inside of the wreath or anything like that. But for these little out parts that are kind of poking out, definitely trim those. And on to the next bundle. This is where I started to use some of those trimmings from before. And if you notice at the very top of some of them, you can really see the stems. So if you try to trim closer to the next set of leaves, sometimes that'll help hide that. Or if you use a different stem that has more leaves at the top that looks more like the tip of a stem, that will help also hide them so you can use them throughout your wreath as well. And you're just gonna keep wrapping and keep attaching. That's pretty much it until we get towards the end. All right, so you're just gonna keep trimming and keep adding little bundles. And you wanna keep going in that alternate pattern of tilting it towards the center of the wreath, tilting it towards the outer part of the wreath, just to keep with that fullness. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and tell you kind of where I got some of the items as well. So the wreath form I actually got from Dollar Tree, which was pretty awesome, honestly. They had a pretty ginormous one at 18 inches. So that was pretty cool, but you can also get it at some places like Amazon and stuff too, of course, which is where I actually got the wire. So pretty cheap, not too expensive in terms of DIY for a really good looking wreath at the end. So while I was kind of doing all of these bundles, I did keep a lot of the branches in like a big 5-gallon bucket full of water. Well, not full, but just to try to help keep the stems a little bit more fresh. They were already kind of drying when I got them from the neighbors. But by doing this, it kind of helped so that while I was making the wreath, everything was a little more pliable and the leaves didn't just like fall off all over the place. I will say that having snips like these, little garden snips, or like even smaller like garden shears or things like that, are quite useful for a project like this. Mine are a little on the dull side after years of usage and need some sharpening, especially for those much thicker stems. It's a little harder to trim those, but all in all, not too bad. Very handy to have. I can leave a lot of these items linked for you in the description if you wanted to purchase any or needed to purchase any of those things. So if you're curious about how the wreath will hold up over time, I will say that it is going to dry more, it is going to brown more, just like the leaves outside that are actually attached onto the tree as it gets colder. Uh, but I will say that to me adds more to the fall look, and I do believe there is a spray that you can get that helps with things like wilting or browning and stuff like that. I'm not sure how useful it would be, honestly, on these leaves in particular, but I do know that using them on like your Christmas garlands, more of those evergreens, it works really well. So I haven't used it for something like this before, but I also don't mind the browning. So I guess you could try it out if you'd want, and definitely let me know if you do. I'll go ahead and leave that spray linked for you for those of you who don't really know what I'm talking about. That way, if you did want to try it for something like this, you can definitely go and purchase it and test it out and all that stuff. Another cool thing, by the way, if you didn't know, if you wanted to make wreaths like this, but you wanted them to actually last a little longer, but also be like real, you can use preserved stems that you can just purchase. You can do it online or buy them at, Hobby Lobby, places like that that have them. And those will last you for years to come. So you don't have to just keep reusing or remaking wreaths all the time, especially if it's not something you like. Me, on the other hand, I actually enjoy this kind of repetitive nature of crafts sometimes. It just helps me to, kind of zone out and watch, my show or whatever. It's very relaxing to me, and so I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. Come, Christmas time, I'll just cut away all of these maple stems and put on, whatever evergreen or even sage and things like that to make a wreath for Christmas. We have a lot of sage growing in our herb garden that I've thought about making a wreath with. I thought would be very beautiful. On top of that, I feel like it could be a really cool way to let a lot of the sage just kind of dry as it sits out in, you know, the elements essentially. We have pretty dry winters here where we live, and our doorway is actually covered for quite some distance on our porch. And so, I haven't tested this out yet, but I thought that this year I could to see if it would be a good way to help dry some of our sage and kind of help preserve some of our herbs. And then when I take those off, I can easily just put them away. If they're not too dirty or anything, of course. Definitely let me know if you think that would be a good idea or something you want to see, or if you've done it before. I would love to hear how it went for you since I haven't had the opportunity to try it out yet. So, yeah, I'm definitely interested in doing it this year. We have tons and tons of herbs that I just cannot get through a lot of the times through the seasons, and I just want to find better ways that we can use them. So definitely comment below if you're interested in seeing me do that. I'd be happy to record it for sure. So we are quickly approaching the end portion of the wreath, and it can get just a little tricky on exactly how you kind of put the stems on there. So I'll do my best to kind of show you and talk through exactly what I'm doing so that it can hopefully be easier for you. It's very similar as far as, getting your bundles together and wrapping them, but it can be a little hard when you have a little less room to work with. When I start to approach the end of the wreath, I will start to do a little bit more trimming more frequently. This way I can kind of keep the area a little cleaner so that I can see what I'm doing and where I'm placing the stems and making sure it's all still fluffy and works together. These last stems that I'm using, as you can see, are a little bit more fresh. They're not as like curled up. That is totally okay. I wouldn't worry about it too much if you start to see the same thing while you're doing yours. I was a little bit like, uh-oh, at first because it gives a different look to the wreath, but it dried just fine and curled up just fine and looks just like the rest of the wreath. So don't worry too much if that's the same case for you. So I do keep with that alternating pattern as I place my bundles on the wreath form. The only difference when you get closer to where we started is you want to kind of lift gently those beginning bundles so that you can tuck the stems from where you're ending the wreath underneath there. It can get a little bit annoying because every time you think you've got enough, you don't. And so you just gotta keep going until it's really nice and full and looks like the rest of the wreath, till you can't fit any more in there, really. So trimming, like I was saying before, as you go, will really help you to kind of see where those blank spaces are and keep your areas clean. I will say though that no matter how hard you try, sometimes you'll still have some little blank areas, and they're definitely easy to just kind of fill in if that is the case. So don't worry too much, just try to fill it. Once you have gotten to a place where you think that you're done, I like to flip my wreath over and kind of look for those branches or stems that might be kind of poking out towards the back. You want to try to make sure the back is flat, so I will trim those pieces off just so it can sit nicely on the front door and not just kind of poke out in weird areas. Keeps it a little cleaner. This is where I'll try to just do some checking here, a little bit of fluffing as well, just to make sure everything looks good before I start to tie off my wire. I don't want to do that and then have to just tie some wire back on. I'll do my best to kind of show you exactly what I'm doing here to end the wreath. But basically what you want to do is just wrap it around a bunch of times. That way it's really nice and secure. And then I do like to try to create a loop as well, just to use to hang it on, unless you have a specific little spot that you can hang it on, or you know, like a command hook or anything like that. Whatever you think would be easier to hang your wreath, or what you would normally use. But for me, I just use those over the door hooks, and so I like to have a small little wire loop to hang it from. It just makes it easier, I think. So in order to make the loop sort of flat so it hangs flat and doesn't twist, I recommend trying to kind of place it like the beginning part of the loop on one end of the wreath and then attaching it to the other. You'll see here in just a minute how I do that. And then you just kind of twist it and tie it off basically. I couldn't quite get my fingers into like where the back part of the wreath form was, and so I ended up just twisting it up on top of the loop. And that is it. Your wreath is basically done. The last thing that I like to do once I've kind of finished is hang it up on a door, or you know, somewhere, so I can really look at it and make sure it all looks uniform. Fluff it up a little bit. So yeah, this is just our pantry door before I go and hang it up outside. So this is just a brown little, you know, hook that I got from Dollar Tree, super cheap. It works really well. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I truly enjoyed making this wreath and getting to hang out with you guys a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notification. And yeah, happy fall, y'all. I'll see you next time. Bye.